A heavy velvet hood suffocated the frantic screams of a bride dragged through the service corridors of the Plaza Hotel. To the Rossi syndicate, she was just collateral, a pawn to cripple a rival empire. They thought they stole a mafia princess. Instead, they abducted a broken woman hiding a deadly secret. The scent of thousands of imported white orchids hung thick and suffocating in the air of the grand ballroom at the Plaza Hotel. It was supposed to be the wedding of the decade, a carefully orchestrated merger between two of New York's most powerful elite families. Penelope Harrington, the spoiled heiress of the Harrington real estate empire, was set to marry into a political dynasty. But hiding in the opulent, gold-leafed bridal suite on the third floor, Amelia Hastings was fighting just to breathe. Amelia was Penelope's older half-sister, an illegitimate secret kept in the shadows of the Harrington family until she proved useful. Today, her usefulness was serving as a human mannequin. Penelope, prone to violent fits of anxiety and indecision, had demanded Amelia try on the backup wedding gown, a breathtaking heavy silk Vera Wang masterpiece dripping in pearls, simply to see how the fabric caught the light of the chandeliers. "Stand still, Amelia. You're wrinkling the bodice," Penelope had snapped just moments ago, before storming out of the suite to scream at a wedding planner about the champagne flutes. Left alone in the massive suite, Amelia stood frozen in front of the floor-to-ceiling mirror. The white silk felt like a shroud. She wasn't supposed to be here. She was supposed to be packing a duffel bag, preparing to run. Her hands, trembling uncontrollably, drifted down to rest on her flat stomach. She was 10 weeks pregnant, and the father of the child was a monster, Sebastian Croft, a wealthy investment banker to the public eye, but behind the closed doors of their Upper East Side penthouse, he was a sadistic tyrant who treated Amelia as his personal punching bag. He was downstairs right now, drinking scotch with the other guests, waiting for the ceremony to begin. The thought of Sebastian finding her, of him realizing she had squirreled away a burner phone and a bus ticket out of Manhattan, made a cold sweat break out across her neck. She had to get out of this dress. She had to flee before the wedding march began. She reached behind her back, her fingers struggling with the intricate pearl buttons, when the heavy oak doors of the bridal suite exploded inward. Splinters of expensive wood rained across the Persian rug. Amelia gasped, spinning around. 4 men dressed in tactical black gear poured into the room. They moved with a terrifying, synchronized silence that spoke of military precision. There was no shouting, no demands. The leader, a towering man with cold, dead eyes, locked his gaze onto the white silk of Amelia's gown. "Target secured," he spoke into a radio strapped to his chest. "Move." Amelia opened her mouth to scream, to explain that she wasn't the bride. But before a single sound could escape her lips, a heavy, dark velvet hood was slammed over her head. The world went pitch black. Rough, calloused hands grabbed her arms, pinning them to her sides with bruising force. She was hoisted off the ground entirely, her feet kicking uselessly in the air. Panic, raw and blinding, seized her chest. "My baby," she thought, her hands instinctively trying to curl inward to protect her stomach. "Please, not my baby." "Keep her quiet," a gruff voice commanded. She was carried out of the suite, the muffled sounds of chaos and distant gunfire echoing through the hood. They dragged her down a service stairwell, her silk dress catching and tearing on the concrete steps. The frantic descent felt like an eternity. She could smell the metallic tang of gun smoke and the sharp scent of ozone. Suddenly, the heavy doors of the hotel's loading dock slammed open. The roar of a V8 engine deafened her. She was thrown unceremoniously into the back of an SUV, landing hard on the leather seats. The doors slammed shut, sealing her inside a moving prison. Tires squealed against the asphalt as the vehicle peeled out into the chaotic Manhattan traffic. Amelia lay shivering in the darkness of the hood, her breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. Who were these men? Did Sebastian hire them? Had he found out she was trying to leave him? "Take the FDR drive up to the George Washington Bridge," the leader ordered from the front seat. "The Harrington family will realize she's gone in 5 minutes. We need to be out of the city by then." Harrington. Amelia's heart stopped. They were talking about Penelope. These men were enemies of her stepfather, Arthur Harrington. They had come to kidnap the bride, to hold her for ransom or leverage, and in the chaos of the suite, seeing a woman in a white wedding gown, they had taken her instead. She was the wrong bride. A hysterical, choked sob bubbled up in Amelia's throat, but it was quickly stifled as the man sitting next to her pressed the cold, hard barrel of a suppressed pistol against her ribs. "Not a sound, Princess," he whispered. "Your father has a lot to answer for, and Adrian Rossi is eager to ask the questions." The name sent a fresh wave of terror crashing over her. Adrian Rossi. Even sheltered in her abusive, isolated life with Sebastian, she knew that name. He was the young, ruthless head of the Rossi syndicate, a man who had taken over the family business by wiping out his enemies with brutal, calculated precision. He was a ghost, a myth of the underworld, and he was currently locked in a bitter turf war with the Harrington real estate conglomerate over lucrative waterfront developments in Brooklyn. They thought she was Penelope. They were going to use her to bleed Arthur Harrington dry. But Arthur Harrington hated Amelia. He wouldn't pay a dime for her safe return. If anything, he would consider it a blessing that his embarrassing, illegitimate stepdaughter had been erased. And when Adrian Rossi realized he had kidnapped a worthless pawn, he would kill her. The SUV sped through the night, leaving the bright lights of New York City behind. Amelia lay perfectly still, tears soaking the velvet fabric against her face. She prayed to whatever God was listening, not for her own life, but for the tiny, fragile life growing inside her. The journey lasted nearly 2 hours, the roads twisting and turning until the smooth hum of highway pavement was replaced by the crunch of gravel. The SUV finally lurched to a halt. Amelia was dragged from the vehicle, her legs weak and shaking. The crisp, biting air of upstate New York hit her, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. She was marched up a set of stone steps, dragged through heavy iron doors, and pushed down a long hallway. The sounds of boots on hardwood floors echoed ominously. Finally, she was shoved into a room. She stumbled, falling hard onto her knees on a plush carpet. The heavy doors clicked shut behind her, followed by the distinct sound of a deadbolt sliding into place. Silence descended on the room, heavy and suffocating. "Take off the hood." The voice came from the shadows, deep, commanding, and laced with a quiet, lethal authority. It wasn't a request. It was an absolute law. Amelia's trembling hands reached up, her fingers struggling to grip the heavy velvet. She pulled the hood off, blinking rapidly as her eyes adjusted to the dim light. She was in a massive, sprawling library. Walls of mahogany bookshelves stretched to the ceiling, a roaring fire crackling in an oversized stone hearth. Standing by the fireplace, nursing a glass of amber liquid, was Adrian Rossi. He was younger than the rumors suggested, perhaps in his early 30s. He possessed a dark, striking, handsome face with sharp, aristocratic features and eyes the color of a stormy ocean. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that did nothing to hide the broad, dangerous build of a man who had fought his way to the top of a criminal empire. He turned to face her, a cruel, victorious smirk playing on his lips. "Welcome to your new reality, Penelope." Amelia knelt on the floor, the torn, dirty Vera Wang gown pooling around her. Her blonde hair, unlike Penelope's dark raven curls, fell in messy waves around her tear-stained, pale face. Adrian took a slow step forward, his smirk faltering as the firelight illuminated her features. He stopped. His piercing grey eyes narrowed, scanning her face, her hair, the terrified posture she held. He had files on Arthur Harrington. He had memorized Penelope's face. The silence in the library stretched, pulling taut like a wire about to snap. Adrian's jaw clenched. The glass in his hand cracked under his sudden, furious grip. "Who the hell are you?" Amelia flinched, instinctively curling her arms around her stomach. I'm not Penelope," she whispered, her voice raw and shaking. Adrian crossed the room in 3 long strides, his presence looming over her like a dark cloud. "Where is the Harrington girl?" he demanded, his voice dangerously low. She wasn't in the room," Amelia choked out, tears spilling over her lashes. "She made me try on the backup dress. Your men, they saw the dress. They thought I was her." A string of violent Italian curses left Adrian's lips. He turned away, slamming his hand against the mahogany desk, the sound echoing like a gunshot. His enforcers had botched the most critical hit of the year. They had kidnapped a nobody, a decoy, leaving the real prize heavily guarded back in Manhattan. "Stand up," Adrian ordered, his voice devoid of all warmth. Amelia tried. She planted her bare feet on the carpet, her legs trembling violently. The adrenaline that had kept her conscious during the ride was crashing. The terror, the exhaustion, and the toll of her secret pregnancy hit her all at once. Her knees buckled. As she collapsed forward, she instinctively twisted to protect her stomach. Her shoulder hit the edge of a heavy leather armchair. The delicate, pearl-buttoned seam at the back of the wedding gown, already strained and damaged from the rough handling, finally gave way. The silk tore violently from the nape of her neck down to her waist, the heavy fabric pooling around her waist. Amelia hit the floor, gasping in pain, her back exposed to the flickering light of the fire. Adrian stepped forward to haul her to her feet, his anger blinding him. But as his hand reached out, he froze. His breath hitched in his chest. The ruthless mafia boss, a man who had seen violence, torture, and death in its most grotesque forms, stood utterly paralyzed. Amelia's back was a canvas of pure, unadulterated agony. Crisscrossing her pale skin was a horrifying lattice of scars. Some were old, faded silver lines that spoke of long-healed cuts. Others were raised, angry red welts that looked like they had been inflicted by a belt or a whip. Near her left shoulder blade was a perfectly round, puckered burn mark, resembling the cruel kiss of a cigar, and at the base of her spine, dark, ugly bruises, purple, yellow, and black, bloomed across her flesh, frighteningly fresh. It was the back of a prisoner of war, not a woman found in the bridal suite of the Plaza Hotel. The fury drained from Adrian's body, replaced by a cold, hollow shock. He had orchestrated violence, yes, but the systematic, repeated butchery marked on this woman's skin turned his stomach. Amelia whimpered on the floor, weakly trying to pull the torn silk up to cover her shame. "Please," she sobbed, "please don't hurt my baby. Just let me go, baby." Adrian's eyes snapped to her face. She was curled into a fetal position, her arms locked defensively over her womb. He didn't call for his guards. He didn't order her executed for being the wrong target. Instead, Adrian Rossi slowly took off his bespoke suit jacket, knelt on the floor, and gently draped it over her shivering, battered shoulders. "Call Dr. Harrison!" Adrian shouted toward the heavy oak doors, his voice cracking like a whip. "Get him here now!" Within 30 minutes, the compound's private physician, Dr. Benjamin Harrison, a disgraced but brilliant former surgeon from Mount Sinai Hospital, rushed into the library. Amelia had been moved to a velvet sofa, completely unresponsive, her eyes vacant as shock finally took over. Adrian stood by the fireplace, staring into the flames as Dr. Harrison conducted a private examination behind a folding screen. The silence in the room was suffocating. Adrian couldn't get the image of those scars out of his head. Whoever had done that to her hadn't just beaten her. They had tried to break her soul. "Mr. Rossi." Dr. Harrison's voice broke the silence as he stepped out from behind the screen, packing his stethoscope into his black bag. Adrian turned, his eyes cold and demanding. "Well?" Dr. Harrison sighed, adjusting his glasses. "It's a miracle she's conscious. She is severely malnourished, chronically dehydrated, and the bruising on her ribs suggests blunt force trauma suffered within the last 48 hours. The scarring on her back. I haven't seen prolonged domestic abuse like that in 20 years. The doctor paused, looking down at his hands. And she was telling the truth. She is approximately 10 weeks pregnant. The stress and trauma of the kidnapping have put her at a high risk for miscarriage. She needs rest, medical supervision, and absolute safety. Adrian looked past the doctor to the edge of the sofa, where his suit jacket covered the trembling woman. "Who is she?" "Her ID says Amelia Hastings," the doctor replied softly. "I believe she is Arthur Harrington's stepdaughter." Adrian's jaw tightened. He walked over to the desk, picking up a secure satellite phone. It was meant to be used to call Arthur Harrington to demand the Brooklyn docks in exchange for Penelope. Instead, a different, much darker plan was forming in Adrian's mind. The phone buzzed in his hand as a call came through. It was Leo, his second-in-command, calling from the perimeter. "Boss," Leo's rough voice came through the speaker. "Harrington's people are making noise. They know we hit the hotel, but they're confused. Penelope is safe at home. They are asking who we took." Adrian looked back at the woman, sleeping fitfully on the sofa. She was broken, carrying the child of a monster, and entirely alone in the world. She was the wrong bride. She was a liability. Keeping her brought him no territory, no leverage, and no money. But as he remembered the brutal, jagged scars carved into her skin, a terrifying, possessive rage ignited in his chest. No one survived that kind of torture, unless they were a fighter. "Tell Harrington we didn't take anyone," Adrian said softly into the phone, his eyes locked on Amelia. "But boss, the girl, she isn't a hostage anymore," Adrian interrupted, his voice dropping to a deadly, resolute whisper. "She stays here, and I want you to find out exactly who Sebastian Croft is, and bring me his head." For the first time in 3 years, Amelia woke up without the suffocating weight of dread anchoring her to the mattress. She blinked against the soft, buttery morning sunlight filtering through sheer linen curtains. She wasn't in a cold, concrete basement, nor was she back in the sterile, terrifying penthouse she shared with Sebastian Croft. She was wrapped in high-thread count sheets in a bedroom the size of a small house, surrounded by antique French furniture and vases filled with fresh hydrangeas. The heavy mahogany door clicked open. Adrian Rossi stepped inside, holding a silver tray. He had discarded the formal suit from the night before, now wearing a simple black Henley that clung to his broad shoulders, revealing the edge of dark tattoos climbing up his neck. He didn't look like a ruthless cartel boss. He looked like a guardian, "Dr. Harrison said you needed to eat," Adrian said, his voice surprisingly gentle as he set the tray on the edge of the bed. It held a steaming bowl of oatmeal, fresh fruit, and a cup of ginger tea. He also said the nausea should be manageable today, if you take it slow. Amelia pulled the silk comforter up to her chin, her eyes wide with lingering mistrust. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "I have no money. My stepfather doesn't care about me. I have nothing to offer you, Mr. Rossi." Adrian pulled a velvet armchair closer to the bed and sat down, leaning his forearms on his knees. His stormy grey eyes held her gaze, completely devoid of the cruelty she expected. "Arthur Harrington didn't even file a police report, Amelia," Adrian said flatly, choosing honesty over comfort. "He told the press his stepdaughter was feeling ill and retired to the country. They swept your disappearance under the rug to protect Penelope's wedding optics. To your family, you are a ghost." A single tear slipped down Amelia's cheek, though she wasn't surprised. It was exactly what Arthur would do. "As for what you have to offer," Adrian continued, his jaw tightening, "I am not in the business of trading broken women. You are under my protection now. No one will ever lay a hand on you again. But I need to know the name of the man who put those marks on your back." Amelia flinched, instinctively reaching for her stomach. "If I tell you, he'll find out. He's powerful, Adrian. He has politicians in his pocket, judges on his payroll. If he finds out I'm here, and that I'm carrying his child, he will kill me just to punish me for leaving." "Let him try," Adrian promised, a dark, lethal promise hanging in the air between them. "Give me a name, Amelia." Sebastian Croft. The name hung in the air like a curse. Adrian didn't react outwardly, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He stood up slowly. "Eat your breakfast, Amelia. Rest," he ordered softly. "You are safe." Downstairs in the war room of the Rossi compound, Adrian convened with his inner circle. Leo, a scarred enforcer with a mind for logistics, slid a thick manila folder across the mahogany table. "Sebastian Croft," Leo grunted, tapping the file. "Wall Street golden boy. But his books are dirty, boss. Really dirty. He's been using Arthur Harrington's real estate acquisitions to launder millions for the Volkov syndicate. Harrington doesn't even know Croft is using his company as a washing machine for Russian blood money." A dark, dangerous smile spread across Adrian's face. The universe had just handed him the perfect weapon. He didn't just have a personal vendetta against the monster who tortured Amelia. He had a legitimate business reason to utterly destroy him. "The Volkovs despise loose ends, don't they?" Adrian murmured, picking up the file. "What happens when they find out their favorite banker has been skimming off the top of their laundering operation? They'll skin him alive," Leo chuckled darkly. "No," Adrian corrected, his voice turning to ice. "They don't get the privilege. Sebastian Croft belongs to me. We are going to strip away his money, his reputation, and his protection. And when he has absolutely nothing left, I am going to introduce him to the consequences of his actions." 2 months passed behind the fortified walls of the Rossi estate. For Amelia, it was a profound metamorphosis. The hollow, terrified look in her eyes slowly gave way to a quiet, resilient strength. Dr. Harrison's strict prenatal regimen helped her gain healthy weight, and a small, undeniable bump was finally beginning to show. Her relationship with Adrian evolved into something entirely unexpected. The feared mafia boss treated her with a reverence she had never experienced. He never pushed her boundaries, never raised his voice, and spent his evenings sitting with her in the library, reading silently by the fire. He was teaching her that a man's hands could be used for protection, not just pain. But outside the sanctuary of the estate, Adrian's trap had finally snapped shut. Through a series of anonymous digital dead drops and carefully planted financial records, Adrian's hackers exposed Sebastian Croft's embezzlement to the Volkov syndicate. Within 24 hours, Sebastian's offshore accounts were frozen. His luxury penthouse was raided by federal agents operating on anonymous tips, and his wealthy allies abandoned him instantly. Desperate, broke, and hunted by Russian assassins, Sebastian reached out to the criminal underworld for a lifeline. That was when Adrian offered him a meeting at a deserted shipping warehouse in Red Hook, Brooklyn. The rain was coming down in sheets when Sebastian, looking haggard and paranoid, stepped into the dimly lit warehouse. He was flanked by 2 cheap mercenaries he had managed to scrape together with the last of his cash. Standing in the center of the concrete floor, surrounded by heavily armed Rossi soldiers hidden in the shadows, was Adrian. "Rossi!" Sebastian barked, his voice laced with forced bravado. "They said you could offer me safe passage out of the country, a new identity. I need it tonight." Adrian casually checked his gold watch. "Safe passage requires capital, Croft. Word on the street is you're currently worth less than the shoes you're wearing." Sebastian sneered, taking a step forward. "I still have leverage. I have information on the Harrington Empire that could hand you the city. But I need money, and I need you to find someone for me. A woman. Amelia Hastings. She ran away from me 2 months ago. She's carrying my heir, and I want my property back." The word property echoed through the cavernous warehouse. Adrian didn't yell. He didn't signal his men. He simply walked forward, closing the distance between them until he was inches from Sebastian's face. "She was never yours," Adrian whispered. Before Sebastian could process the words, Adrian drew a customized Colt M1911 from his shoulder holster and fired 2 suppressed rounds. The mercenaries behind Sebastian dropped to the floor, instantly neutralized. Sebastian gasped, stumbling backward and falling to his knees as the reality of the situation crashed down on him. Adrian Rossi hadn't come to make a deal. He had come to execute him. "You orchestrated the leak," Sebastian stammered, his eyes wide with sudden terror. "You ruined me. Why? Over Harrington's stepdaughter. She's nothing." Adrian stepped over the bodies of the mercenaries, his gun aimed squarely at Sebastian's chest. "You burned her skin. You broke her ribs. You made her fear the very air she breathed," Adrian said, his voice dropping to a demonic register. "She is a queen, and you treated her like dirt." "Please," Sebastian begged, raising his hands, the arrogant monster finally reduced to a trembling coward. "Please, I'll disappear. You'll never see me again." "You're right. I won't." Adrian pulled the trigger. The echoing crack signaled the end of Amelia's nightmare. Later that night, back at the estate. The storm had passed, leaving the upstate air crisp and clean. Adrian walked into the master suite, having washed the scent of gunpowder from his skin. Amelia was awake, standing by the large bay window overlooking the moonlit gardens. She wore a silk nightgown, her hands resting protectively over her rounded stomach. She turned as he entered, reading the solemn, quiet finality in his eyes. He didn't need to say the words. She knew it was over. The shadow that had haunted her life was permanently erased. Adrian crossed the room, stopping just a foot away from her. He hesitated, his hands hovering in the space between them. For a man who ruled an empire with absolute certainty, he was remarkably cautious with her heart. Amelia closed the distance. She reached out, taking his large, calloused hands and placing them gently over her stomach. "He's gone," Adrian murmured, his thumbs gently brushing against the silk over her skin. "You are completely free, Amelia. To leave, to stay, to do whatever you want. No one will ever track you. You have a new life." Amelia looked up into the stormy grey eyes of the man who had stolen her by mistake, only to become her salvation. "I don't want to leave," she whispered, leaning her head against his chest, listening to the steady, strong beat of his heart. "I am exactly where I belong." Adrian wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly against him. The mafia boss had kidnapped the wrong bride, but as he held his new family in his arms, he knew it was the most perfect mistake he had ever made. If you were captivated by Amelia's intense journey from a broken captive to a fiercely protected queen, you won't want to miss our next gripping mafia romance. Hit that like button. If you loved Adrian's ruthless devotion, share this story with your fellow dark romance addicts and subscribe to our channel for more thrilling tales of dangerous men who will burn the world down to protect the women they love. Turn on notifications so you never miss a twist.